I'm Lindsay Orridge and I've worked in the automotive and motorsport industry for the last 20 years. I run my own business called Motorsport Collective, and I also run a non-profit called Driven by Diversity, which focuses on accessibility and inclusion in the motorsport industry. I grew up in this area, sort of Oxfordshire, Buckinghamshire area, where everybody works in the car industry and everybody works in motorsport, and it's not an unusual thing around here. And none of my family ever worked in it, but I always loved the event side of things. I found that really inspiring, of like building an event and having people come to it and having a great experience. So that was kind of my entry into it. I started working at Silverstone in the press office for the 2001 Grand Prix. Feels like a very long time ago. And from there I went to an agency that works for Ford and Bentley, Volkswagen, running events for them. So eventually got poached by Ford from that agency and went and ran all of their motorsport sort of partnerships and events and marketing. So World Rally Championship, running around the world and doing fun stuff. And then I went to launch the Wraith for Rolls-Royce and Range Rover Sport as well, the Range Rover. Ended up at Monster Energy for my sins and ran all of their motorsport comms for quite a few years, and then I set up on my own. Yeah, loads of cool moments. I think I'm really fortunate that I've seen behind the scenes of how the industry actually works rather than it being, you know, sort of what it looks like from the outside, and I'm really lucky that I can pass that on to the next generation of people coming through. So that's really nice to be able to do that, tell the real story. So I set up Driven by Diversity as a non-profit foundation in 2020. I was at quite a pivotal sort of point in my career. Obviously the pandemic affected our industry hugely, and I had to start thinking about what I really wanted to do and what I wanted my sort of like legacy to be, and even if it was something that wasn't like work anymore, something that kind of had a bit of a legacy to kind of carry on and use all my contacts and use all my sort of knowledge. So I set up Driven by Diversity as the non-profit to really kind of help people access the industry who don't traditionally get access to the industry. People point to people that look like me and say, oh look, diversity, because it's a woman. But I'm a middle-class woman who grew up in Oxfordshire, who not a minority in that sort of sense. I might be a minority in terms of numbers and women in the industry, but it's so difficult to get into this industry regardless of who you are, let alone whether you come from maybe a sort of more disadvantaged background, or you're a person of colour, or you're from the LGBTQ community. And I just thought, well, now's the time. The world was going that way, and looking at all the things that were going on in 2020, I thought maybe now's the time to kind of start putting some of this into play. So I set it up really just to make sure that people who were wanting to get into the industry could see the roots in, understand how they needed to educate themselves to get into it, if it was something from like a formal point of view like engineering, but also the behind the scenes stuff like I've done that's not engineering based or technical based, that actually you could see the real story of what it's actually like to work in this industry, because looking from the outside, it's not what it's like. It's not what it's like. So, this old girl, I've always wanted a 944, and I nearly bought one years ago. I nearly bought a Silver Rose 944 Turbo and didn't, because it would have been a stupid idea at the time because I was never home, was always on plane, and always regretted it. And 4 years ago my father passed away very suddenly, and he was always sort of, you know, the reason I'm into cars is because of my father. And I thought to myself, yeah, it's about time I bought one. So had a little look about, bought this Guards Red linen leather interior, 3-litre S2, and I bought it from a fellow lady owner who wanted it to go to another woman. So I think when I turned up on her doorstep, she'd already sold it to me. So got it at a nice price. And yeah, she's a good old girl. She needs a bit of paint, but she keeps running. I love driving this because you still don't see many on the road. It's the right colour. Everybody always looks at it. Whenever I go past kids, I always pop the headlights up and they love it. It's still got a bit of punch, it really, really does. It's so smooth and easy to drive. And I mean, I drive it in all weathers. Snow, ice, the lot, I don't care. I drive cars whenever and wherever, because I don't think you should have museum pieces. I personally wouldn't want something in the garage that I was too frightened to drive or too nervous that if somebody scratched it in a car park that it would, you know, be the end of the world. So she gets driven everywhere and anywhere, and it's just so nicely balanced, being, you know, sort of obviously front engined. It just feels so smooth and it just sticks to the road, and it's a real joy to drive. And everywhere I go, people always stop you and, you know, compliment it and always want to know a bit more about it. So yeah, I love her. So my dad never owned a Porsche or anything like that, but he was always into his cars. And as a kid, I was dragged around for hours upon hours upon hours, looking at cars and him, you know, negotiating / screwing over secondhand car dealers for good deals. And it was just, you know, sort of one of my enduring memories is literally buying red turtle wax for my mum's red car and using it as a kid and thinking it was just the most magic thing ever. Yeah, we always had that as a common thing, you know, sort of driving cars and enjoying them. And he had so many cars, it was ridiculous. And yeah, it was one of the things that really tied us together, that and music and other things. But yeah, it's nice to have something that sort of reminds me of him. Colour magic is the perfect word for it, because it literally is, and I genuinely, it's one of those things that is such an enduring memory. It really, really is, same as you. I can literally remember you were able to do it as a child because it felt literally like colouring in. So it was like that weird sort of thing of being like, oh, I'm a kid, but I can do something really grown up. And, you know, I used to wash cars when I was a kid and to make money, and just absolutely loved that concept of thinking you could put something here and you could see the difference. So like that, you know, sort of difference between the two was just, I love it. It's something that actually, yeah, works perfectly on this colour car as well. So it's nice to have that, yeah. A product that you've used for years and years and years and you still continue to use. I have to say I rarely clean the Series 3 because it's fit for purpose and it doesn't need to look shiny and new. I actually don't really like those sort of Series 3 like resto mods where people like strip them all back and it looks absolutely picture perfect, because that's not what that car's for. The dog gets thrown in the back. If you ever need to, you know, move anything, you can shove it in the back and take the top off in the summer. And so it gets cleaned probably twice a year, but this one more often. Yeah, I actually find it quite sort of meditative cleaning the car, and when the conditions are right, when it's not too cold, and actually getting out and giving it a good scrub, it feels, I want to drive it immediately afterwards as soon as I've cleaned it. And that's, I suppose, sort of the best sort of compliment, isn't it? That looking all shiny, you want to show it off. I actually find it really, yeah, quite a sort of soothing process when you've got the right time to do it, that you actually kind of get into it and you can see the before and after and the difference. So yeah, I love it. To me, car care is making sure that it's, especially with an older car, that you're caring for the original paint in a really sort of sensible way, and it's not sort of damaging it, and making sure that I'm using products that are actually clean and not helping to kind of strip back that sort of original layer. This has still got some original paint on it, and I have to be really careful with what I use on it because it could very easily damage it, so I want to make sure that I'm looking after that. But I really enjoy actually making sure that my cars look clean. Not all the time, they definitely don't look clean all the time, but it is important, Any women wanting to get into the industry, I would just say, do it. Like, why limit yourself, and why think that you can't do it? Like, if I can, anybody can.